All right. So, good day, everybody, and welcome back to this third part series of, or this third part of the four-part series of federal grant writing. We are recording all of these calls, and as soon as we get the video uploaded, we will be emailing the recording and any slides from this to all the folks who registered. So that will probably be either later on today or tomorrow. So again, everyone, my name is Melanie Edwards, and I'm with the Wallace Center, and I'm based in Washington State on the Olympic Peninsula on Coast Salish land. So hello to all my West Coast friends out there. Before we welcome back our guest, Dr. Barrett Vaughn, we want to familiarize you all with our work. The Wallace Center is a national nonprofit that brings together diverse people and ideas to co-create solutions and build healthy farms, equitable economies, and resilient food systems to support a future where all communities have the power to nourish themselves and regenerate ecosystems through a just food and agriculture system. And our work is delivered through the Food Systems Leadership Network, which is a national peer learning community that connects current and emerging leaders, strengthens individuals and collective leadership capacity, and fosters collaboration across communities. And the goal of the network is to accelerate the realization of a just, equitable, and sustainable food system that generates good food and health for all. So as we start today's topic, which is on structuring objectives, we want to remind you all that we're not experts in this, and we're not here to talk about the details, the technical details of like the RFAs for FN LPP or RSP grants. But, if you need more technical guidance and questions answered, we highly recommend that you reach out to the USDA. And I'm going to pop the email addresses into the chat in just a moment here for more specific technical assistant questions regarding those grant applications. So I'm excited to reintroduce you all to Dr. Barrett Vaughn, who serves as the Associate Professor at the College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences at Tuskegee University. And last week, Dr. Barrett walked us through brainstorming and capturing a vision, as well as selection and defining your ideal for federal grant applications. And those of you who were with us last week, you had some homework to do. So I hope you return today prepared. And last week, we were also joined by the USDA, who did an overview of the FM, LPP, and RFSP webinars. And we had some past grantees to offer some tips for creating compelling applications that meet evaluation review criteria. So I'm going to put all of our past recordings in the chat. Those of you who have registered, you should have received an email with those links. I'm going to pop them in the chat again for you today. And with that, I'm excited to hand it over to Dr. Vaughn, who's going to walk us through structuring objectives today.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see all of you this afternoon. Can everyone see the slides okay? Yes, thumbs up. Yes, good. Okay, excellent. It's great to see everyone this afternoon. Again, my name is Barrett Vaughn. I'm an associate professor at Tuskegee University. There's quite a bit that we're going to try to cover today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with kind of a review of the last 2 weeks, and then we're going to launch into some new information, specifically dealing with structuring objectives. And we're going to look at a couple of funded projects and sort of analyze those as a group. So this is going to be rather interactive today. I'm going to try to keep track of time. And if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat, or you could raise your hand. I know that we have our Wallace Center team who have been gracious enough to ask me to do these workshops, and I've really enjoyed the first two. Looking forward to today's and tomorrow's, and not tomorrow's, Wednesdays. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we've already done brainstorming and capturing a vision, selection and defining an idea last week. Today, we're dealing with structuring objectives, and then we're going to look at identifying measurable outcomes and developing tasks on Wednesday. So just to do a bit of housekeeping once again, if you can, please have your video on so I can at least see your wonderful, beautiful faces. If you have a question, raise your hand or type it in. Please keep your device on mute so we'll be able to clearly hear the person speaking if someone has a question. And please ask questions. If you have a question, someone else probably does too, and that's how we all learn. So questions may be sent in, and I'll address them at the next session, or most of the time we've been able to address them actually in the session, which is excellent. So I think we're doing great at trying to address those, because you need this information now because time is drawing very short with this proposal. So this is a little bit of information I've just been sharing about how much it is and what the match is. There was a very extensive discussion on match. I would strongly suggest you go to a previous program to see the discussion on match, because we just may not have time to really do that. Okay, so the focus of this workshop, or this set of 4 sessions, is I want you to be prepared for the LFPP and the RSFP and every other funding opportunity out there to come. So essentially what my focus is making sure that you are going to understand the process enough to be able to deal with any kind of opportunity that comes up. All right, so about me, associate professor. I've been on panels since 2007, USDA, DOE, NRCS, FSA, well, almost FSA, right? They changed their date. But so a lot of different things awarded over that amount. I think I stopped counting. I wrote a book. This is the book. It's available on Amazon. Yes, that's a shameless plug. And my epiphany in 2005 is that 10% of all proposals that are submitted are excellent. They're likely to get the money. 15, they're mismatched, they're misplaced, they're not particularly prepared in enough time or using enough time, and they're not going to get the money. But 75% is they're just good. And so that's kind of where we're trying to move you, either to the top of that middle 75% and into the 10, if at all possible, and my book talks about that. So a little bit about the people who have signed up initially was at 2/3 were pretty new. And I know that you've been asked to kind of follow a prompt and put those in the chat. About 3 out of every 10 have written a few, and a number have actually written a 1. So I'm sure that this is probably somewhat representative of whom we have here today. So just as a review to go really quickly, and I'm watching the clock. The first session we had, session 1, brainstorming, capturing a vision. We talked about vision, which is what you want to see accomplish. And your idea is your written description or documentation of your vision. What will be done with a prediction of the outcome, and it's in a finite time and space. And your idea is what you're actually sending to people, not your vision. So your idea is a portion of your vision. There may be a whole bunch of different things that you yourself are personally interested in. But the idea will be capturing certain ones of these, and few funders will actually support everything you want to do, but they will be able to support some of those. And so those are kind of the things that are captured together. And understand, if you remember nothing else, the reviewers are critiquing the idea, not the vision, and not you. So, you know, the vision that you have is how you yourself want to see the world changed. We presume to be better, as most people probably have a concept that that's what they really want out of the world, is to make it better, we hope. And so this is kind of what we're looking at. So we had a brainstorming assignment for the first time, really writing short descriptions of what you want to see accomplished or which goals you want to see met, you know, kind of putting together like what it is that you see your organization or you as part of your organization really do. And then there were a couple of tasks to really start preparing to really write, if you had not done so. And many of you have already done that, but just wanted to make you aware of these resources. The AMS page has a lot. It has a seminar video that's there that's very helpful. And then the request for proposal, request for application, they're used interchangeably for a chosen program. And then really writing all the parts of the proposal that need to be completed, like listing those. So at least you have to understand and list all the potential supporters who could write letters. So we did a bit of question and answer that day. And then we got into reviewing, selection, and defining an idea. So the assignment for 4-5, which was last week, was to write, which was given last week, write short description, what you want to see accomplished. When we started to talk about those as a group, this was last Wednesday, looking at what did it help you learn from doing an assignment? Did it help? Do you think it will help you in future in grant writing? So we talked about that. And we talked about how you have some things that are outside of what your vision is, like what you're kind of interested in or how you want to improve the world. And then there are some things that may still be cool, but they're outside. Like for me, produce safety on small farms is like something that I really want to see. Like I want to improve food safety on small farms. I want them to be able to access larger commercial markets because they can get certification, and I want them to minimize the risks that they may inadvertently pose to their consumers. Even though they're small, they may not have a great range or scope, but if it's one person that's sick, that's still bad. It doesn't have to be 10, doesn't have to be 50. But small herd livestock, I understand it. I think it's cool. It's just not something that I'm interested in. So in terms of purpose of determining your vision, I have my glasses, but they're out of reach. So maybe I'll get another chance on Wednesday. You're asking, what are you trying to tell me? I can dodge review or negative comments. And I'm saying, no, I'm trying to tell you that when you determine your vision, you won't have to. And really that's because the more focused that you are about what it is that you want to focus on, the more certain you become in putting these together. And so, you're more resistant to Frankensteining a proposal to try to put it together to accomplish everything you want to do or everything that your team does. And you may be being swayed, and it gives you more of an understanding of why you should be telling your coworkers no, or telling even yourself no when it comes to, we don't have a youth component in this, but maybe youth component doesn't fit, or we should be doing this and maybe that doesn't fit. And so if you understand what it is that you want very well, it makes the process easier. At least I think it makes it easier for me, and I'm going to be asking these things of you. So, when you have your idea, we talked about this, and then your idea might be certain little things, and they relate to your objectives, but they are not necessarily the objectives themselves. So depending on how you're phrasing things, and we're going to tease this all out because someone asked, what's the difference between tasks and objectives and steps and vision and idea? We're going to tease that out today. So you'll have a better understanding of at least how it is that I'm describing things in terms of the process of putting things together. Okay, so your objectives are those sets of tasks that will achieve B, L, and T. And who doesn't want to achieve B, L, and T? And if you're vegan, then the B is could be banana, could be beets, could be blueberries, and not bacon. All right, assignment for 410. This is where we're at right now. Enjoy your weekend. If you were celebrating or something. Select a few descriptions that relate are set in time and space, which can be supported. Give a well-defined overall goal and give between 3 to 5 general steps to achieve it. And the task, if you've not done so, outline a proposal. And if you've not done so, contact potential supporter to ask if they will be willing to write letters or sign one, draft a letter just in case, particularly if your targeted beneficiary are farmers, because they more than likely are going to want you to write the letter. That's just life. So anyway, not to belabor the point, but moving on along. So we did question and answer. So here we are today. So I went through kind of our thing, talking about structuring objectives. This is session 3. This is where we are actually starting. And so outlining today, we're going to go over the assignment, talk about that, talk about goals and objectives, look at some funded projects for the LFPP program. We're going to do not a shallow dive, not really a deep dive, but sort of like a mid-range dive into the logic model, or if you want to go deeper, we can. And then we're going to look at what your assignment is for the last of these 4 session workshop would be Wednesday, what we're doing. And then we'll have Q&A. Okay. All right. Any questions so far before I launch?
I just want to quickly put a plug in that, yeah, our last session is on Wednesday this week. And we're also going to be having an office hours as well. So if you want to have like a little bit more opportunity to ask Dr. Vaughn questions, to go over some of your objectives and goals and things like that, we are offering an office hours, and we definitely want this to be like a more BIPOC office hours, because they typically, BIPOC folks have less, access to resources and so forth. So I don't have that information right now, but I'm going to pop it into the chat for you all. So if you would like to attend office hours, we'll have a link for that.
All right, any questions? I don't see. I do appreciate people buying the book though. And I do hope it helps. Okay, so let's talk about where we are in terms of the assignment. All right, and this is what the assignment was. So how did this assignment go? Can some people give their impression in the chat? Were you able to effectively identify goals and steps? That would be, say, tasks. And was the process made any more efficient from our early process in terms of considering your vision? Now, I'm not asking you to put up your answers, but I am asking, how did that assignment go for those of you who were able to do the assignment? I know it was a holiday weekend. Anybody in the chat? I don't see anyone responding as of yet. I'll give y'all a couple seconds to hit send.
Yeah. And if we have a brave person who wants to come off of mute to maybe share as well.
Okay, good. Someone said, definitely still in the visioning phase, trying to refine what we really want to do. And personally, I think that is very important. I think it's very important going forward in trying to build a portfolio, because the thing is, like, you know what you want to do, and you may know what it is that you want to do for the LFPP, the RSFP, but by and large, you and or your organization have a body of things that you want to accomplish. And over time, you're going to be having access to different funding sources that are going to come up, if they're with the government or with nonprofits or the foundations or anything else. You want to be able to be as narrow as possible so that when you start to talk to people about what you've done, they perceive that as being really deep in that area and really knowledgeable about that area. So if your interest really is in connecting farmers to local markets or CSAs, it's great if there are things that you've done even on a small scale with like a SARE grant or $15,000, $10,000, $25,000, to be sure that you can say, yes, we did this, we did that, and even the things that you do with just your regular basic budget to kind of help people. So you've got a body of things that you've done. And so when they start to talk about in a proposal, like, what is your background, what is your experience, you could start to give descriptors of, we did this, then we did this, these are the results, these are some of the outcomes, and so that really helps establish you as being a knowledgeable organization in the area that you're actually applying for. You don't want to get to a point per se that you're kind of saying, okay, we've done like 5 things, but only 2 of these are really going to apply, and then you're kind of having this internal dialogue of, do we really put down the other 3 things that we've done? Or you don't really want to have to try to put the cow, as one of my colleagues says, put the cow under the tree, which you can do. I mean, you can relate some stuff that you do to stuff that it is that they want to do that you may not have done as much for, to kind of talk about how it's preparing. But it's like, that's making an argument, like, we did this, we didn't do what it is that we're proposing now, but there are some clear linkages. It's possible to do. It's absolutely possible to do. It's just kind of a, it's a sell. You've got to try to sell that. So we have a couple more comments as I'm just trying to take up more time. It says, as an agricultural organization, our timeline is restricted by the growing season. Yeah, but sometimes I don't have specific months, but more like activities before last frost or after last frost. So my timeline feels nebulous when they ask for it in specific dates a month. Well, you can give them just that explanation that you just gave. You know, you can be really explicit about it and kind of explain how that impacts your workflow. And what it is that you do to kind of maintain continuity, which if you're concerned that they have a focus on continuity, talk about how you bridge those times. Selected a few potential supporters, received 2 letters of support. Congratulations. That is outstanding. That is great. Because those are not easy to get. I'm trying to make sure that I do not understate how important that is to get letters, because they are not easy to get. This also helped me refine what our supporters are looking for. Yes, because they're going to say, all right, well, I was able to speak with one of our partners to better define our objectives and found the potential persona. That's great. That's why I think that process is important. Now, some of you may think, well, that was a little woo, and we had some people that are like, he's not really talking about such and such. And the bad part is, like, the next day they were going like deep into the nuts and bolts of both of the programs, in the Wallace Center sponsored workshop. So if you weren't pleased with what I had, the next day they were really going there. But I'm trying to make sure that I'm preparing folks for the whole deal. But that's great. So I'm really gratified to find out that, for some of you, the assignment went well. You can do this at any point in time, and it's really just looking at the kinds of things that you want to do. At this point, now that you've kind of broadly looked at your vision and you've kind of broadly looked at the ideas, we're going to start to get down into some details. Okay. When we talk about objectives and our goals and such. And so talking about goals and objectives. So I put this diagram up here to kind of explain how it is, and the really kind of the more structured the shape, or the more rigid the shape, the more rigid that is. So I'm going to take a little bit of time. So you've already defined what your vision is, and your division kind of is there. And I put it as a dashed line because there's some stuff that comes out and goes in. Like it's permeable. Like some stuff that you say, oh yeah, I think that this is important. Well, over time you might say, well, it's important, but it may not be. Or we're not able to really get a real competitive edge on it. Like, I'll give you an example. My institution, at one point in time, they abandoned aquaculture because they were not going to be able to be competitive in that area. So they just said, hey, the PWI, the 1860 has it, let them have it. Like, they got it on lock. We can't compete. I tried to do, a foray into like an edge of it, really look at energy efficiency, and I was able to get some money. But in terms of actually starting to establish some real infrastructure at the university in this area, there was pushback. They were like, no, we're not even going to waste our time or resources even pursuing production aquaculture because they have it. Like, and none of our supporting scientists, reproductive biologists, or anybody else, they're not interested in it. So it's like, you may be doing something that's very small, but we may be putting thousands of dollars into it. So, in terms of vision, in terms of saying, wanting to make a contribution in that area, like, I did it. I got 2 funded projects that were from the state of Alabama, Department of Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs. Got 2 nice grants. And then, like, I stopped it because I knew that the university did not have a commitment to continue with that kind of work, because from their perspective, the big university up the street, they had it on lock, and why even try? Like, there's so many other things. Like, we could be spending that money on goats, and we have expertise in goats between us and the other 1890 that's in the state. And so, kind of defining your niche. And as you go on in doing these things, you kind of define, like, this is my thing. And so some things are going to go out and some things are going to come in. And you say, well, why would some things come in? Well, sometimes it has to do with national needs. Sometimes it has to do with where the funding is. And then you kind of gear up to start working on some topics that you can leverage the things that you've done and the things that and the personnel that you have in a direction that makes sense in terms of keeping your organization sustainable. So it's not really, so much putting the cow under the tree, but it's like, this is a national need. And this is kind of the direction that we need to be going as an organization to be sure that we are able to really make a contribution. And then some areas are going to just sort of drop off. And then what's on the outside of your oval, your dash oval here are, things that are, they're good things, but they're just not for you, at least not right now. I mean, they're good. Like for me, small herd production, like I think that's cool, but I'm not really interested in it. I mean, I understand how much money they could be making, what kind of impact it would make on farmers, because most of the small farmers we work with are diversified farms, but we got people that deal with that. They're very good at it. Not really part of my vision, part of the university's overall vision, particularly for extension, but not mine. Okay. But the vision is what you want to see in the world, and your purpose is why you want to see it. Right. And that can take several different, ways, depending on how you consider life and existence and everything else. But so it's kind of like what you want to see is what you're putting, and then why is sort of the purpose of it. And so, my purpose, like I have a heart for small farmers. I could go more into it, but this may not be the forum to do that. So inside of the vision of all the things that you're interested in doing, there's a funding opportunity that actually just drives what the idea is, because the funding opportunity is going to say, we fund A, B, and C, or we fund 1, 2, and 3. And so if what's inside of the things that you want to see in the world kind of fits with what a potential funder wants to fund, be it, federal government, be it state government, be it regional, be it, foundation, then you cobble together the things that you want to see into a form to say, okay, this is something that we can get money so that we can forward us towards realizing the vision. And so that's what the idea is. It's a written, documented explanation of a collection of things from your vision that satisfy what the funder wants to have. Okay. So it's the idea is kind of like what you want funded, and the goal is why you want it funded. Right. And so you kind of have to think about what is your why. All the time people say, what is your why? Well, your why is you want to help such and such group, clients, farmers, students, ag businesses, watershed managers, whoever it is, to do something. And your idea basically is is the collection is singular. What is the collection of things that you think need to be done to kind of get towards realizing that idea, towards that goal? Okay. And so under the idea and your goal are your objectives. And so you have however many objectives. Like I've seen proposals that have as many maybe as 7 objectives. 3 or 4 is usually said to be that quote unquote sweet spot. I try to stick with 3 because it doesn't seem to be cumbersome. Like if you have 4, that's great. No, Dr. Vaughn said only have 3. No, Dr. Vaughn did not say only have 3. Dr. Vaughn said make sure you understand what it is that you have, and make sure that your objectives, they make sense together. They're coordinated. It could be that they're parallel in some respects, like you're doing them all at the same time to achieve the goal. It could be in serial, which means that they go one after the other. They're sequential, like we need to do this, and then after that we need to do this, and then we need to do this. So it could be sequential, it could be serial, it could be parallel. You could be doing things at the same time, maybe a little bit time shifted. Like, if you looked at a Gantt chart, not all of them would start at the same place in the end, presuming everybody knows what a Gantt chart is, right? A little slidey thing, but no. Okay, well, like a timeline chart, that's what a Gantt chart. Gantt has 2 ends, 2 T's. And so, that maybe I should go over that next week. And so you have a number of things. And so under your objectives are steps to get there. So your objective is the thing to achieve. So taking all of your sets of objectives, like we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. All those things put together are your idea that go towards manifesting that goal, that go towards achieving that goal. And under each objectives are certain things that you're going to do. And it may be one thing, it may be 10 things. You might not want to put 10 things, but somewhere between 1 and 10 might be really good. But it's like, this is the first thing that's like the first component of what we want to do. And under that, this is how we're going to achieve that. Okay. So that's how a lot of these or these things that I talk about kind of mess with each other. Do we have any questions so far? I can check the chat. Oh, okay. Oh, just webinar. Okay. Any questions? So this is kind of how I kind of parse it. So what I really wanted to do, which I thought would be fun today, is really to go and look at some funded projects and start to talk about goals and objectives. And again, this is going to be interactive. Okay. So the last couple of years for all of these programs are posted. The descriptions are posted. And if I'm not mistaken, the way that it kind of works is, you put in your application, you send it into USDA, they have their blue ribbon committee get together and sort of, go through it and review it. Then they select and they rank, and then whoever it is or however it is that they make the decisions on what money goes out, they go ahead and they make that decision. Like, okay, well, we had 200 projects come in, we're going to fund 100 of them, and it's the top 100. And so, they may be in different kind of subsections, but by and large, they have it. So for the, and I wanted to use the LFPP because there's more of them, and they're a little bit less money than the RSFP. But the local food promotion program, fiscal year 2022, there is a description of the funded projects. It's a PDF on the AMS site, and you can download it and you can absolutely just sit there and just read, and you can see exactly what was funded. It's alphabetical by state, which may not be important to you, but is doggone important to the senators and the people in Congress, because they want to be sure that their state's represented. But that's how they do it. So it's not alphabetical by the applicant, it's alphabetical by state. Okay. So I've picked out a couple of them to kind of go through and sort of talk about what we think about how cohesive, how complete, and how they really express it. Now, I will tell you one thing. I did go through and try to find ones that sort of enumerated things so that we wouldn't have to be trying to, go too hard into these descriptions. And like I was about to say, once you're selected and they say, yes, you got the money, I think what they do up front is they ask you, look, we got to send some out to the senators and Congress. Can you give us a description of your project? X number of words, including X, Y, or Z. And these, I believe, are the things that they send out at the beginning before they send out their press release to say, we're funding, in this case, almost $32 million in this program. And so many states were represented. I think it was like, 12.5 states that were represented. So let's kind of look at the first one. This wants to work. Okay, good. This says recipient is the Arizona Board of Regents on behalf of Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. Okay. And it says enhancing Hawaii's, I know I pronounced it wrong, forgive me, food security through aquaculture. So you can y'all read it? Can you see it on your screen? I know if you're on the phone, it may be difficult, but can you see it? Kind of, sort of. Yes. No.
Yes,
maybe.
we can see it.
Okay, good. All right. So just to kind of sit here and read, they have, what their why is or what their purpose is. And they're talking about, researcher at ASU will oversee market analysis and oversee a market analysis and feasibility study of aquaculture in Hawaiian Islands. That's a really tough gig, folks. Aimed to improve income and economic opportunities for both traditional and contemporary aquaculture producers. So They enumerate theirs here. I'm not recommending you enumerate them. I'm just picking ones that did enumerate them so you can kind of look at them. So it says, how many things did they say that they're looking to do? It's 3. Okay. And so it says they're conducting market research on species that have a market potential. That's the first thing they're doing. They're identifying gaps and solutions for needed aquaculture supply infrastructure. And then they're developing a brand trademark with production standards attached to it to promote seafood grown in traditional native Hawaiian aquaculture systems. So you can see from this that there are 3 objectives that they've got. And so it kind of, they've got some verbiage here and how they structure. You're going to see how these are all differently structured. They talk about this project will assess current production levels, research how consumer preferences might be shifted towards farmed fish, including tilapia and traditional fish pond raised species, and identify how aquaculture producers can be supported through supply chain development. Right. So all of the things that they're identifying, conducting the market research, identifying gaps and solutions for infrastructure, and developing a brand trademark with production standards are all supposed to be going to an analysis, market analysis, and a feasibility study of aquaculture in Hawaiian Islands. And the goal is to improve the income and economic opportunities for traditional and contemporary aquaculture producers. So they really looked at what their goal is, and then they identified 3 things, 3 objectives under their goal on how to get there. They wanted to improve income and economic opportunities. And the things that they said that they want to do: conduct market research, identify the gaps in infrastructure, and develop a brand. Now, were there other things that they could have proposed that they did in terms of wanting to improve income and economic opportunities? I mean, a yes or no question. Were there other things that they could have thought would have been good to do? Well, yeah, of course. They could have wanted to do the same thing, and they could have taken a completely different approach. But this is their approach. Do we think that these 3 things that they're suggesting, do we think that they're cohesive? Do we think that do we see how they kind of work together? Do you see anything within these 3 objectives that kind of seems like it doesn't fit? Right? You're trying to improve income and economic opportunities. To do that, you're doing market research on species that have potential, identifying gaps in solutions and infrastructure, and developing a brand and trademark with production standards. Do those all seem like, raise your hand if you think that those, and be prepared to put it down. Raise your hand if you think that these are kind of cohesive. You don't think they're cohesive? Okay, someone raise their hand. Yes, and I would agree. I think that these kind of fit well together. They're saying, this is what we wanted to do. These are 3 things that we have in our approach, and we think we're going to get them where we need them to go. Okay, thank you. Y'all can lower your hands because I'm going to ask you to raise your hands again. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, this next one coming from the great state of Colorado. Southwest Colorado Food Hub and Node Connectivity Project. So this project is a collaboration of 5 nonprofits and 5 food hubs covering 1/4 of the state that will increase access to and availability of local, regionally produced agricultural products. The project will, 1, expand and connect the infrastructure of 5 mid-tier value chain enterprises, that is food hubs, by establishing a new food hub facility in Gunnison, establishing a 4 hub-to-hub distribution route, to meet increased demand with greater efficiency, frequency, consistency, and reliability. And 2, developing the wholesale market for local regional farmers through 3-year regional marketing, education, and outreach campaign, annual series of agritourism events, and 5, speed dating between chefs, buyers, and producers in the regions. Okay. So how many kind of larger objectives do they have? And you can see here the way that they conceptualize it, they have 2. And when it comes to expanding and connecting the infrastructure of these food hubs, they're looking at establishing a new one and then expanding distribution routes between them. Okay. And so that's how they see in terms of expanding and connecting. Obviously, expansion, the new one. Connection, expanding the distribution routes. Okay. And the second thing that they talk about is developing the wholesale market for local regional farmers through a 3-year regional marketing, education, outreach campaign, annual series of agritourism, farm tours, and speed dating events. Okay. So how many of you think that these two objectives they have are mutually dependent? If you think that they're mutually independent, raise your hand. If you think that they're mutually dependent, keep your hand down. Independent, dependent. Okay. All right. So someone they're independent or they're dependent. Independent, dependent. Okay.
We got some answers coming in the chat.
Okay. Okay, good.
We got a couple independents. We got a dependent.
Okay. So here's what I think. I would think something would be independent if you could probably do one or the other and that be the whole project. And I really think that they could do number one or number two, and that could be the whole project without the other one existing. And you're saying, Dr. Vaughn, why is that important? The reason why that's important is that if you are looking at your objectives, and if your objectives are not necessarily kind of either series or parallel or chronological, you may want to examine how much impact they all have. Now, I will tell you, I think these two, in terms of making sure that you are able to have the distribution network that you have, and then making sure that people know about you, to be sure that you actually have customers. I think, because it's developing that wholesale market. But I also think that it would be entirely possible to do one or the other. And I think that the way that they explain it, and the proof would be in the pudding from how they align their funding for it or their staff or task for it, that they could be mutually independent. And like one of these could probably be it. But yes, because they're integrated activities, they say these integrated activities address supply side and demand side issues simultaneously. Okay, producers across the region who want to scale up their business will gain reliable pathways to new wider markets. New and existing markets will gain access to wider number of producer and products along with reliable, frequent, and consistent delivery. So if you raise your hand, if you left your hand down, you're correct, because they themselves say that they're addressing supply side and demand side simultaneously, and that is purposeful. But there are instances where you may have a project and you are going to look at one particular thing and focus on that, and the rest of the world or the community are dealing with some other things. And so, just as kind of a side bit, I know we're kind of running out of time. Can someone come and kind of either type or say, if you were on this project and you were deciding, you know what, I don't think we have enough resources, even though it's crazy dollars in these things, but we don't have enough resources to do both. What would you give as your justification for doing once, or do you think you would need to give a justification? The question is, if you were only going to do one of these two, do you think you would need to justify doing just that one, or would you not justify it? Okay, one person said not justify. After you have the grant. No, like in the proposal. Right. Carrie Jones, you're absolutely right. Yes, justify. Just make a pervasive argument for the one that's being pursued. Justify and prioritize. You could do one or the other, but I think you need to justify if they want that, but you're skipping it. And I agree. I don't think that this is at the level of Frankensteining, but I would, in the writing, explain exactly why I was taking that approach. And I'm sure that they did, because obviously they got the money, right? We're not talking about people thinking about getting money. We're talking to people who have the money. But one of the things that I think that they did really well is that they sort of explain the fact that not only were they dealing with supply side, but they dealt with demand side. And I would presume that they kind of explain that more. So I agree with a lot, like it's a judgment call, but I wanted you to think about, like, what would I do? Because hopefully that will allow you to look at your objectives in a better light and how you kind of frame your objectives if they're not necessarily chronological or serial or sort of parallel. Okay, moving along. All right, got 10 minutes to go. All right, this one's from the great state of Florida. So this project aims to create new distribution channels and expand market demands for Florida grown agriculture products, thereby increasing sales of local fresh produce and proteins in Monroe and South Miami-Dade counties, way down there. The project will benefit more than 30 farmers of the South Florida Farmers Coalition by one, increasing sales of local produce and proteins with expansion of institutional and direct consumer contracts for freshly prepared, then frozen meals and frozen produce. Two, establishing contracts between coalition farmers and food retailers, including restaurants and grocery stores. And three, implementing targeted marketing and education initiatives to ensure sustainable market demand for South Florida farmers. So they have, they're saying expanding markets and eliminating destruction barriers, a year-round local produce solution for South Florida. So, they're looking to, they're looking at contracts. They're looking at, contracts, but for direct-to-consumer contracts. And I think that, I presume that would be maybe something like Hello Fresh, maybe, or CSAs perhaps. Then they talk about contracts between coalition farmers and food retailers. So institutional contracts, I presume. And I'm sorry, farmers and food retailers, institutional was before. And then implementing targeted marketing education initiatives. So they've got three things that they're doing that are going towards increasing the sale of fresh local produce and proteins in a particular geography. Okay. And they talk about their 30 farmers that they're going to impact. Got the money, apparently. They did okay. You're right. Okay. Here's the next one from the great state of Maryland. BIPOC people, BIPOC people have historically experienced significant barriers to entrepreneurship, and the COVID-19 pandemic significantly widened those barriers. With the support of the LFPP, Flavors Inc. will support 150 BIPOC local growers, farmers, and food business enterprises within the greater Prince George County region by launching a hybrid 12-week culinary micro-enterprise program. The program will, one, improve business development knowledge and growth strategies to help grow and scale a profitable agriculture and culinary business through weekly workshops led by field experts. Two, provide equitable access to local growers, farmers, and culinary business advisors and funding opportunities through collaborative community partnerships. And three, develop and launch the Flavors web and app-based virtual education program for program delivery to local growers, farmers, and BIPOC food businesses to connect, network, and expand their business opportunities with food and beverage entrepreneurs, industry leaders, capital, and investment resources, and service providers nationwide. So their goal is to support BIPOC local growers, farmers, and food businesses in this area through a hybrid micro-enterprise, culinary micro-enterprise program. So, which is, they're looking at, a particular, I presume that they're really looking at, they have a particular curriculum or curricula, related curricula, and they're looking at how they're going to deliver this information to a targeted group. So it's seeming like they're probably going to have weekly workshops that may be in person. They're going to have web and app-based virtual education program delivery to maybe those that aren't able to make it, and then to kind of, as I don't know if I'm using the term correctly because I wouldn't use it, but like wrap around, or I would say ancillary services that they're going to do to also support that group. Okay. So they're looking at it, they're saying, we have this content, we have these experts lined up, we kind of have an idea of what they need to be successful. We're going to get it to them in person, we'll get it through them virtually, and then we'll have things to support it. So can someone think of something that they might have thought of to say, hey, this is something else that might complement your effort to support these local growers, farmers, and food business enterprise in that area? I mean, just type something in the chat. You think, hey, this might have enhanced it. Okay, I'm just take the first money. Well, they're going to give money. Do you mean by money? Okay, partner with a business incubator. Okay, well, yeah, that might be something. Partner with a business incubator. So let me just take some license here and say, okay, so they have the folk, they have these businesses, and what they might have given, a unlimited amount of money, started an actual like community kitchen, which would take a ton of cash. But for these people that are like food business enterprise, growers, farmers, that might be a cool kind of thing to add to that, to say, hey, you need to test market your stuff, we can help you do it, and then you could take it to your own place or whatever else. So yeah, that's a great idea. See any more chats? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. You might want to contact them if they need any suggestions. So moving right along. We got a
Before
couple
you
more.
leave, I have a question, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, hi, this is Marche. Sorry, I just joined. So with number 3, number 2 is expanding the rural access program. Number 3, I read number three with the collaborative community partnerships and funding through the partnerships. The collaborative community partnerships, does that not mean community soup kitchens and partnering with local colleges and partnering with the businesses that can help do that? Or
More
should
than
we
like,
have actually written that in the grant, written that in the as a part of it?
I guess that might have been a judgment call. Maybe they were running up on their word count.
Okay.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. That could be exactly what it meant. That they have community partnerships with, say, food kitchens, or with community kitchens, or with words on the tip of
I'm just
my
trying to make
tongue.
sure I'm reading it correctly, because I mean,
Oh,
even
yes.
down look, when they're connected and network to expand the opportunities, the entrepreneurships. I was just making sure I was reading it, and I interpreted it that way. So okay.
Oh no, you're reading it out. This is, we have what they have. Obviously the document is accessible to be able to get more detail, but sometimes you might want to think about how could this be improved when you're coming up with your objectives, and if it's possible to do and it won't seem out of place. You may want to think about it. I know we talked a lot about stuff being too much, but I also wanted to make a point to say sometimes something else could enhance. Okay, so it kind of goes both ways. You want to make sure that when you kind of round it all out, that you're looking at the entire picture. Okay, we got a couple more, and I know we're running out of time. This one was a fair food project. They're looking at expanding and promoting offerings of local foods, expanding a newly established rural access delivery program, increasing exposure to and purchase local produced products, and creating a new expanded marketing opportunity for local farmers in the Hudson Valley area of New York. Okay. Oh, Lord, I forgot about the logic model. Okay, so these are a couple examples, and I hate to give the logic model short shrift. Okay, y'all mind if I go until about 3:05 or 3:10? Is that going to be a problem? Yes.
It's fine by us. And anyone who can't stay on, this is going to be recorded, but yes, we can go over. Absolutely.
Okay, because I wanted to kind of cover this. So the logic model, and I know a number of you have worked with the logic model, and the logic model is a planning tool to allow you to sort of look at how you're putting your project together and how you're actually getting the results that you want to get out of it, and leads you into how it is that you're going to have to be able to put into place the measurement of those results and also evaluation. Okay. So essentially, there are some kind of external factors or some outside things in terms of what is the situation, what are the priorities, what are your assumptions, and what are your external factors. Like when I talk about the food safety work that I do, I say the assumption is that the risk of contamination is going to continue to remain, in that we're going to continue to have immunocompromised people in our population that would be very, very, seriously harmed by consuming contaminated produce. And so those are assumptions. External factors might be the funding, funding will remain, available. External factors might be, we will continue to have domestic production of produce. It won't all be just, flown in from someplace else. That small farmers will continue to be able to, access insurance resources to make sure that they're viable, those kinds of things, their own little safety net. And so the really big things of this, and we'll go over a bigger version of it, are looking at your inputs. So it's what resources do you need, or do we need? You're looking at your outputs, which are activities and participation. So basically, what do we need to do in order for those individuals, groups to accomplish the short-term outcome? And participation in terms of who must be reached for the short-term outcomes to be achieved. Okay. And then really what ends up being the most important thing are your outcomes or your impact. And you have short-term, medium-term, and long-term. So, short-term, what preconditions must be met for the medium-term outcomes to be achieved? And then medium-term is what preconditions must be met for the ultimate goal to be achieved. And then what is the ultimate goal, which is your long-term outcomes. Now, I will say it is very unfortunate that outputs and outcomes start with the same three letters, pronounced the same way, but they are very different. A lot of times what people are writing about what they are going to accomplish through a proposal are actually outputs. Like, we're going to have workshops, or we're going to have a session, or we're going to do this. Those are outputs. Those are not outcomes. Outcomes are unique, and they're different because there has to be a process involved to measure it. And you say, well, there's a process involved in trying to count how many workshops we had. Yeah, but you planned a workshop, you had it, right? So you had it. If you have 15 workshops across your state, you had 15. That's not really an outcome. Having the workshop is not an outcome. That's just an output. Like, you got your people together, you got the resources to do it, you did all the planning. What happened from all the planning and the resources that you put together is that you got some stuff. And the participants are the people who came, who participated in your program. So you had activities, you had these workshops, you had these field days, you had these demonstrations, whatever those were. And then the people that came were farmers or local businesses, agribusinesses, food entrepreneurs, whoever it was. That's participation. Like, that's just a part of it. Those are your outputs. Your outcomes actually require measurement. Like, you have got to have some kind of instrument, some kind of follow-up, some kind of system in place that's very intentional and deliberate in getting out like what actually became of it, which is why they call it outcomes. Okay. So you have your situation inputs, outputs, your outcomes or impacts, your assumptions, external factors, which I've talked about. So this is a bigger slide of it. And it's just kind of an example. So it says, you have your situation priorities, you have your assumptions, external factors, and your inputs are what we invest, staff, volunteers, time, money, research base, materials, equipment, technology, partners. And then you have your activities. What do we do? Workshops, meetings, services, develop curriculum, we train, we provide counseling, we assess, facilitate, partner, work with media, whatever else it is. Who do we reach? The participants, the clients, agencies, decision makers, customers, farmers, youth, agribusinesses, food businesses, BIPOC clients, rural residents, whatever it is, those who you reach. But here we go looking at the outcomes, and the outcomes are the things that you should be reporting. Should you report your outputs? Of course you should. Like you should say, yeah, we held 15 workshops, or yeah, we provided counseling to 150 food businesses, right? You should report that because that's important. But what you really want out of it are going to be your outcomes. And so your outcomes are really looking at, short-term outcomes, medium-term, and long-term outcomes. So, short-term is learning. And that can be change in knowledge. And under learning is kind of like awareness. Is it something they didn't know that they know about now? Knowledge, they actually learned something. Attitudes, like they kind of changed their perspective on things because you've given them more information or an experience that kind of changed it. Have you given them skills? So you said, well, we're going to show you how to castrate goats or something, right? So they've learned something. Or opinions, not sure how that works in, but aspirations, like, if you're dealing with youth and you're saying, okay, well, we're going to take them to museums, science museums, and we want them to be interested in science, and we have them talking to some scientists at the museum, and they'll be interested in STEM. And so their aspiration is like, well, what did you want to be before? Like, I wanted to be a fireman. So what did you want now? I want to be an astronaut. That may be what you wanted them to do. You may want them to be an astronaut, or direct themselves in that direction. And motivations, like, why are they doing things? So medium-term results are actions, and what we talk about in terms of behaviors. What is it they're doing? It's kind of like when everything that's in their head kind of gets through their heart and kind of flows out their hands. Practices, things that they put into place. So, they were spraying 7 on their collards, and now they're actually using some, organic, more natural pesticides that were not used by, your grandfathers, right? Something just like from the 1900s. And then decision making, like they've made a decision, like what they're going to do, policies, social action. And so those are the kinds of things, changes in behavior. And then the ultimate impact is you want to see a change in condition. So that could be social, it could be economic, could be civic, could be environmental. For us, a lot of the times what we're really able to measure is economic change. And so we're able to say they are making more money. Like we taught them this so that they would make more money. They learned like to do this technique that was more economically efficient. They decided to try it, which is a change in behavior. And then we were able to sit down with them and go over their books in terms of how much they spend on pesticides or spend on whatever it is. And they had an economic change because their yields went up or their losses went down, and they were able to make more money. And so that's kind of the thing. In my work with food safety, we did a lot of training. We had a lot of conference calls and everything else. Those were outputs. Like we were wild with outputs. We had small group meetings, large group meetings, consultations, the whole kit and caboodle to try to get, farmers to do that. So in terms of being able to measure their knowledge, we could have done a pre and post test on what did you know about being able to wash, or what did you know about sanitation? And then we could have checked it afterwards. In terms of medium-term results, we could have gone out to their farms and seen, okay, they, cleaned up, they got rid of some of their debris that, just kind of sitting around the farm that would have been harboring, things that could potentially bring contamination, or they straightened up their shed and they put stuff on pallets in the shed so that if there was a spill of oil, the oil would not get into their, pesticides, their dry, powder pesticides, granular pesticides, stuff like that. Like, they took action. And then the ultimate impact would be, did they make more money by being able to access? And really with us, our ultimate impact was that they got certified. Like, they did all the work to go through a certification and got food safety certified, which gave them access to greater markets, which meant that we actually had two. One that was kind of required by USDA, or recognized by USDA, which was certification. And the other was they had a change in their income and their revenues. Okay. So, logic model sections, inputs, what we invest, personnel, monetary resources and materials, outputs, what we do and whom we reach, activities, workshops, meeting, products, participants, or client or customers. And then your outcomes or impacts are what the results are: changes in knowledge, which is short-term, behavior, medium-term, and condition is long-term. Okay, I kind of went over that. And so when it comes to change in knowledge, that's in the short term, it's measurable during the activity or perhaps even shortly thereof. Like, do you know more? And I would say that there are two ways to measure change in knowledge. You can measure their impression of their knowledge change, or you can directly measure their knowledge change. So if what you were trying to show them was, you talked to them, let's just go back to the pesticide example. You went back and you talked about, what pesticides are safer than other ones. And you could say, to find out their perception, like, do you know more about safe pesticides? And they could be yes or no. You can use a 5-point Likert scale. I feel, yeah, I know more. No, I don't know more. And you can measure that. And that's kind of what a lot of people do, is they don't necessarily measure it. But, to really measure it, either you would give them a list of pesticides that you've discussed, and then you may say, okay, which of these would you identify as being a safer pesticide? And if they check 7, obviously they didn't learn anything. But SEVIN, not the number. And so, you could do it that way. That ends up being a little bit more difficult and a lot more not as acceptable, because you're actually testing them on stuff and not just asking them. But I have to put that out there. When it comes to change in behavior, you measure it shortly after activity, and it's relatively easier to measure than, say, condition. So you have someone who comes to your farm and you call them a couple of weeks ago, or when you get into the season, you say, hey, thank you so much for coming to our workshop. We're just following up with you to see if there was anything you need, and just find out, like, when we talked about, some of the safer pesticides that you might use, have you gone out and bought those? Have you made the investment in those? Do you know where those are? And they may say, yeah, I went to the thing, I decided, just to try it on 5 acres and still using my regular stuff, but I'm just trying it out. So they had a change of behavior. Like, it actually, like I said, got down from their head into their hand and, kind of out of their hands. And then changing condition would be something that you have to be really kind of deliberate on, in terms of saying, okay, this farmer has decided that she has 20 acres. She's going to plant 5 acres using this upgraded pesticide. Like, she's not going to take the risk. But what we're going to do is we're going to be sure that we are there to get yields. We're going to be there to measure, pest pressure, those kinds of things. Yes, I hang out with entomologists. And so those have to be more scheduled and really much more deliberate. And so I'm going to go ahead and close. It's 12 after. I appreciate y'all time and attention for those of you who have stayed. And be sure that you do the survey, which our wonderful people from Wallace are going to pop up on the screen. But what I would like you to do is to give one or more results that can be measured and what your targets are. So we kind of talked about that today, and we're going to do a deeper dive into it. And then write 3 to 5 tasks that must be completed considering the results. And the reason why I have it ordered that way is that sometimes you have to kind of reverse engineer your objectives. You can go forward in terms of your goal, but sometimes you have to look at, okay, what is it that I want to measure? What can I measure? And then you go back and say, okay, this is the task that I want to do. Because sometimes you may work forward in terms of your task and then try to figure out what it is you can measure. And then you find out, well, I can't really measure that. You know, and you want to be sure that they connect. And then in terms of tasks, keep on those letters. You guys are doing a great job. And keep reviewing the proposal. I know you're reviewing and rewriting, and I hope that this information is helping. Do we want to go to the chat?
Yeah, we have some questions.
Okay.
So this goes back just a little bit when we were looking at some of the awarded models, but we have a couple questions there. One of them, somebody asked, and maybe Dr. Vaughn, you might have a little bit of insight on this. I don't know how to answer this question, but they asked, can a 501c3 farm grower or farm who grows produce to support underserved communities through the food pantry partnership apply for LFPP grants?
That's a USDA question.
Okay.
And I apologize. I have an opinion, but you don't need opinion. You need the right answer.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pop those the email addresses for the USDA again into the chat. And then another question for one of the first ones that you showed, which was like Arizona and Hawaii.
Yes.
There was a little bit of questions about like, can you explain why one state was funded to do this work in another state? Is that common? Would it not make sense to fund someone who was local to the area to do this work?
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer. But I do know if they are looking for a grant writer or someone to do food safety on the ground, that I know the perfect person that would be more than willing to sacrifice and go to Hawaii. I would imagine that they have an existing relationship with the state of Hawaii. And I probably still mess it up. I can't imagine that they do not have boots on the ground already. I can almost imagine that University of Hawaii and University of Arizona probably wrote similar proposals and both submitted it thinking they could get twice. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not accusing them of anything, but I have seen it. So it's entirely possible that they are working with University of Hawaii and they decided to write parallel proposals. And there might have been, if you go back through the list, you might see University of Hawaii actually got something that sounds suspiciously exactly like this. The other reason why I think this might be the case is there are sometimes, like, we have an aquaculture program that's not, I shouldn't say we, because it ain't we. The state of Alabama has an aquaculture program here at one of the PWIs that is really good. That may be better than some of the ones in even surrounding states. But let's say they have a great program that's kind of like, let's say end to end, sort of like from, production biology going into, raising the little, catfish eggs and how they nurse them in a nursery and, grow them out and have growing out, put them in ponds, all the stuff. Let's say that, Puerto Rico, I shouldn't say Puerto Rico because they've had so many problems, but let's say another state that's like Puerto Rico had a need for that, or like the same kind of species. And they were saying, okay, well, we're going to work with some of the people there to try to get them up and running because we've done so much work on similar species. So it very well could be the fact that University of Arizona has done a similar project focused on Arizona, and they are able to work with the local farmers that are there in Hawaii to kind of take that technology, how to do the marketing research, how to actually identify those gaps, how to come up with a brand. And they kind of exported that really it's the technology, but exported that process over there to kind of help them. And you'll find that on occasion. And typically what ends up happening is that it's that home state that's connecting with another state to do it. And they kind of bringing them like their PI, but here they basically are the PIs. But that's an excellent question.
Yeah, and we just want to open it up to everyone in the room. If you have any questions, feel free to come off mute or raise your hand. Also, you can pop it into the chat.
It says it could also be that their main researcher from Hawaii just got a job at ASU. That is absolutely correct. Why you would leave Hawaii, I don't know, but okay. Yeah, me too. All the juicy stuff is in the chat. Okay. Any other
Hawaii
questions?
has a lot of researchers that leave because of cost of living. One of the things, if
Yeah.
you're going to do anything with the native population, make sure that you have agreements with them prior to writing the grant. This AZ is not working with UH, and they also are having problems with the practitioners because they wrote the grant wrong. The Apua'a system, the ponds are for salmon only, and they want to work now as a feeding system, which is not what the native practitioners do. So there's a lot of pushback, and you could actually get a problem where you have a funded grant that you're no longer able to do a part of because you didn't understand the background. So definitely know that, get it in your letters of support. I'm learning now how important letters of support are because of a SARE grant. But definitely get all of that before you get a grant, because you could end up with a grant funded and not be able to do a part of it because you didn't understand what you were doing.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm gonna talk about a project that did not get funded. And it wasn't my fault. But I was a reviewer for a program, and the project was to fund research on an aquatic plant species, actually lotus. They were trying to establish it in one of the southeastern states, one of the ones that's kind of between Georgia and Mississippi. And it was from a big 1890, I'm sorry, not 1890, but 1862, that's also in a southeastern state somewhere between Mississippi and Georgia. And so they were proposing that they were going to grow lotus in catfish ponds, and they were going to sell the flowers to people that like the lotus flowers, which I guess is very beautiful. And probably, I would presume, in Atlanta or Birmingham. But one of the things that they put was that they were going to start part of their program as reaching out to the local communities in like the impoverished area of the state, to have them eating the root part of it. I guess that there's the flower and maybe cut it off, and then there's the root part of it. I have no idea what the lotus root looks like, but they were going to be helping the people to eat lotus root and cook it in dishes and enjoy it. The local people, not people in Birmingham that might have experienced it, or not people who may be international, people in Atlanta, but they were talking about the local people. And I was looking at that proposal and I was like, you have no support from anybody in that community who even halfway even wants to think about eating any lotus. They're not going to, like, you're going to do a, right. I don't disagree. I'm just saying, I know people that don't eat kale. It's like collards, mustard, and turnip. And I grew up eating kale, and I almost couldn't find the first couple of years, like no one had heard of kale. I'm like, kale, you got your big three greens. So, I mean, but they, right. But they never showed or demonstrated that they were working with anybody locally who would have been interested in even trying that. But anyway, I digress. Any other questions?
Yeah, there was an unanswered question in the chat.
Oh, no.
It's okay. The chat was, just going, but it was, what do you think about having your objectives be the outcomes you're hoping to achieve? Is that too abstract?
Having the objectives be the outcomes you hope to achieve. Yeah, yes, that works. But they still need, that's kind of why your next exercise is dealing with measuring and kind of working back. It has to still be measurable. Okay. So if you're kind of taking your sort of your high level ideas and kind of implanting them down, you still need a way to sort of do your measurement, your evaluation. If you can solve that problem, you're fine. I mean, it's not going to really matter how you propose it, but you definitely are going to need to be sure that it's something that is measurable. And sometimes that takes making sure that it's it's well crafted, even if it is a higher end idea, but that you've recrafted it to be very finite and measurable. Did that answer the question? And yes, the grants are ripe with exploitation. Just unfortunately, nature of the beast, which is why please do serve on these review panels, because they need some people that have some knowledge about these things. So that when they come up against something that just does not make any sense, then someone's there saying this makes no sense. Any other questions, or did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think like the biggest takeaway is making sure that your objectives are measurable, because there was also another comment in the chat about framing their objective, which is like farmers rated themselves to be better equipped to apply for NRCS programs, and I typed, you should write like, as a result, X many number of farmers were better equipped, and what does and also specifying what better equipped is came from someone else as well. So just as specific as it can be. Looks like you've got a fan. Someone wants an autographed copy of your book. We've got like 5 more minutes left. And if there are any other questions coming up, even if it's not directly related to what we talked about today, but maybe something we've talked about over the past several days, please feel free to unmute yourself, type it into the chat. We have one more session coming up on Wednesday, so we hope to see y'all all there. And Dr. Vaughn, do we have any homework?
Yes. Yes, we do. Ooh, I went too far. He's gone too far. All right, is it still up, or did it wink out?
Yeah, we can still see it. It says
Okay.
questions and oh, there you go.
If I go too far, it'll stop. Right. So essentially, give one or more results that can be measured and what your targets are, and write 3 to 5 tasks that must be completed considering the results. Like I was saying, kind of reverse engineering it. And understand this process is a process, but I really do think that the more time that you really spend being very deliberate on identifying what it is that you're going to measure and how, it's going to strengthen your proposal in terms of the evaluation. Most of the time in most of the processes with proposals, they're always asking, was the evaluation plan adequate? And was the also dissemination plan, was that adequate? And maybe not so much for this one, but that ends up being really kind of important in terms of determining, can you really say what it is that you are saying you want to say? So you have to be really exact in what it is that you are saying that you want to get out of it. And you need to be relatively exact in how you're describing how to measure it. So, if you're saying we're going to have 50 farmers that are going to increase their revenues, well, that's measurable. Can you get that practically from people? Because people get a little bit goofy about their money. But there are some workarounds that you may want to say, and be sure that you're including how it is that you're going to measure it. Or you do something like, we're going to establish farmers markets, and we're going to be getting their receipts at the end of the day. So they may be willing to share some of their money results, but they might not be willing to share all of them. Or you do a check and you say, we're going to see at the beginning of the day what their potential revenue would have been. They brought 50 bins. It's $5 a bin. They should be making $250, and you may check on them later to see, okay, how much do they have left? So that would even be it would give you a twofer. One, it would give you how much is actually going out in terms of produce. And then it would also give you the money if you did the math, and whether or not, because there you would be talking about potential money that they could be making, regardless of whether or not they offer someone a deal. Like, okay, if you buy 4, you get 1 free. Well, potentially they could have gotten 250. And when you come back and they got like 10 bins left, and you say, okay, well, you potentially would have made $200, right? Unless my math is goofy, which it might be. But so that's it, folks.
I'm going to just add one thing I found out from a SARES grant that I just went through, did not get funded. One of the main reasons is the researcher in our specialty did not know the newest technology out. And I was proposing using eDNA for testing. He did not realize that that is being done. He dinked our project, and I mean, we were close, and I now know I should have had a letter of support for that. I shouldn't have just put it in the references, because you're given limited words, and I didn't think I needed to explain eDNA, and I did. And I should have had that much more. He was working with technology that was 5 years out of date, which is fine. But little things like COVID has pushed that technology so much in the future that he was going on well-reasoned, well-documented information that was just a little bit behind where it is now. And you gotta, if you're gonna do something like that, you gotta have it backed up, because you cannot count on all of the researchers being right up to date. That's just one of the things I've found out.
And thank you so much for that comment. And one of the things that I would say is, in your situation, you were beyond the quote unquote state of the art. And one of the things that I've seen as a reviewer is when proposals get dinged for being behind the quote unquote state of the art. And, with certain of our institutions, be they small or be they minority serving institutions, they may not have the most cutting edge of stuff. You may not have the most, cutting edge of equipment to do whatever it is that you're measuring, particularly if it's scientific. You may not have access to all of the different bells and whistles in terms of apps or software. So when you start to talk about your methods, you probably want, if you have knowledge of where you are in relationship to the state of the art, you may want to kind of explain the reason why we are using this method is this. And thank you so much for doing that, because it's happened so much. I've been on a panel, and it's usually been a HBCU or a HSI or another MSI. And I have people on the panel like, well, this particular technique is 5 years old, like they should be using such and such. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, they may not have like running water in the bathrooms, running hot water in the bathroom, but they've got some equipment that will get them a certain level of accuracy. And maybe the level of accuracy that they're going to get is going to be enough for that project. Like I've known some of my colleagues, like they were doing some high level genetic stuff, and they knew that the lab that they had was not going to be able to tease out the question tease out the results that they need to answer the question they wanted to ask. So they partnered with, some more up-to-date labs at a larger, better funded institution to kind of, take their samples or whatever it was, take it there and tease those things out, because it was their alma mater. So they kind of had an inroad. And then kind of came back and said, okay, this is why this is coming up this way, but they didn't necessarily have it there. But sometimes a shovel is going to dig a hole. It may not be, it may not be a backhoe, but a shovel is going to do the job. So sometimes you may need to explain it if you really kind of know about that kind of difference or expectation that people are going to have. And I've seen this so many times. I've seen times when reviewers are like trying to rewrite the proposal for the proposer. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, they know the situation that they're in. They know their clients. You might say, well, I don't know why they're doing paper surveys. They should be doing an app and giving people a QR code and then just basically doing it in SurveyMonkey or some other server or Qualtrics. And I'm sitting there like, they know their clients. They know it's not going to work for them. But it's a shame because they're going to have to explain, something like, we're on the other side of the digital divide from where our customers are. And these are the methods that are going to be most effective for us, like either calling them or giving them a paper survey, and giving them a QR code with the link to Qualtrics for them to use a cell phone that they either have and don't know how to use or don't have to be able to do the survey, which they may not have a whole lot of comfort with using, is not going to get us the data we need. And so I think, like I said, I think the most important thing about having people in the room that have a broad enough background of what's really out there that people are experiencing is so important. I'm not sure what give them more money is, but yes, they need more money. Whoever it is.
Thank you. We all need more money. Thank you very much, Dr. Vaughn. This has been great. And I hope that everyone that's here, you join us again on Wednesday this week on the 12th for the final part in this series. If you didn't have time to do your homework this past weekend, you have double homework. So, we definitely want to be here to help support you and making sure that you're successful in these grants. So with that, I bid you all
survey.
adieu. Oh, it's okay. Well,
Okay.
do I have time? Do y'all feel like taking a survey real quick? I can launch it.
Do it.
Okay, thank you. Yay.
We
I
just
can't
talked all that about metrics. You have to get your survey.
You're right. You're right.